Deanna might have mentioned that one of my research areas is flexible work arrangements. So I've been really intrigued and I have to say somewhat alarmed by all of the articles that are coming out that offer all their top 10 tips for working more productively at home. And in fact, I've selected just a few of my favourites, if I can get my screen to move, which I can. So apparently while we're working from home, we're supposed to be exercising more, doing a few burpees, listening to some podcasts, scheduling meetings with our team members, even if we've got nothing to talk about, because that will just keep us accountable and more productive. We should be scheduling our children and letting people know when we can be interrupted, as well as making time for hobbies and crafts and telling everybody else where they can work, because this is where we'll be working. Now, I am not sure about you, but these types of tips tend to make me feel a little angry, and that's because I don't have that much control over the people I'm sharing my house with. And I don't feel that I magically have more time to do more exercise or take up a creative hobby. In reality, I think that many of us are feeling like we're working longer, we're working harder, and we're working under significantly more stress. And while I have long been a champion of working from home and practiced it myself and doing it right now, there is a dark side to working from home. And I want to draw on some research from pre-COVID-19 to talk about those downsides and discuss why they might be heightened in our current environment. And maybe give some thoughts to what we can do about that, although I will stop short of giving you my top 10 tips. Okay, first of all, research has indicated that, or long indicated, that people that work from home do feel isolated and a sense of disconnectedness from the workplace. And that's, we feel that we aren't necessarily involved in discussions that our colleagues might be happening, that the work that we're doing might be invisible to our supervisor. So we worry about our peers and our supervisors' perspective of our performance. And consequently, we can worry about our career prospects. Now, pre-COVID-19, we would normally overcome this by spending a few days in the office, or at least going in for important meetings, or being involved in, social gatherings, even with our work colleagues. But in our current environment, those options are no longer available to us. And as Ross rightly pointed out, those feelings of isolation and disconnectedness are even more heightened because our opportunity to do that with our normal family and friends in our social life is also taken away from us. So to this point, I would say that there is some credence to some of those tips that I brought up earlier. There's nothing wrong with doing more exercise, staying connected with friends and family, and using our brains creatively. In fact, those things are really important for our well-being. And they are things that we should try and do while we are working from home. My problem, however, with those tips is that many of them imply that people who are working from home are also not using their time effectively. There's this underlying assumption that we're sleeping, we're washing, we're looking after the kids, we're doing all the things that we would do at home, but we're doing anything but working. And we should have more time to work. There's this assumption that we're more easily distracted. Yet there's considerable research, including my own, that suggests that in fact it's quite the opposite. So I have done some prior research on flexible work arrangements in a large Australian organisation. And in that research, the employees who were working from home were actually doing so to be more productive. They were doing it to get away from the distractions that they experienced in the workplace. So you colleagues dropping in to have a bit of a chat, a phone constantly ringing. And I'm sure that many of you as academics have done that yourself, have gone home to really focus on something in particular. And as you can see, I've got some quotes there from the employees in my study, and you can also see that they felt that this was a privilege to be able to do this, and so they weren't going to slack off, and they had this really strong work ethic, and so they were going to do more. And this kind of experience is consistent with a lot of research on flexibility, especially research that suggests that workplaces, especially if they're open plan workplaces, are more distracting than working from home. So why does the research suggest that we're more productive when we work from home? And is this still the case in the current the current COVID-19 environment? Well, to put it very simply, we're more productive because we work longer. We're simply working longer hours. And in my research, you can see by the quotes on the screen there that the senior managers in the organisation I studied acknowledged that this was the case, and that staff were likely to work much more when they were at home. And they saw this as a real tangible benefit of offering work from home for their staff members. Studies have also shown that we exert greater effort when we're working at home, and we're more motivated to perform. And there's many reasons for this. Sometimes it's because we're actually more grateful for having the opportunity to work flexibly. We see it as a benefit that not everybody gets, and it gives us a higher sense of autonomy and a sense that our supervisor trusts us. So we want to exert that effort to prove that we are performing to our usual level, if not to a greater level. That brings with it a fair amount of guilt. And you can see even in my research that the supervisors acknowledge that it comes with guilt in the way that we undertake our work. We also work longer because technology makes work constantly available to us. And that's never more so in the current environment where we're constantly Zooming and we're texting and we're emailing in order to interact with people. And this leaves us with a sense of being constantly on. And this might be great for employers who reap the benefits of us working on Saturdays or working at midnight, but as our job creeps into other parts of our life, we risk overworking and we risk burnout. And I would also like to say that there's been some early research that's emerging. So Professor Peter O'Connor in the School of Management and team he's working with have done some research in the current COVID-19 environment that suggests this concept of continuing to exert greater effort or proactive job behaviours is continuing even in the COVID-19 environment. Okay, so job creep blurs the boundaries between our work and our non-work roles, and it creates what's called work-life conflict. So work-life conflict is something we experience when our work spills over into our non-work or our family life. Conversely, we can also feel stress and we can perceive a negative impact on our job when our family life spills into our work life, and that is often the case for many of us. So previously, we would have managed this conflict by really simple strategies that helped us to manage those boundaries. So things like when we travel to and from work, we'd use that time to kind of think about what we were going to do during the day or unwind from work. We'd use it to transition between the various roles that we carry in our life. And also before we could choose when we work from home. So to that degree, we had some control over our work-home environment. But now we're actually required to work from home. We're also sharing our spaces with others, and we might be homeschooling kids, and we can't as easily control those boundaries. So not surprisingly, in our current environment, there's some evidence that family life is interfering more with our work life, and we're reporting difficulty in focusing on our work commitments. That's not saying that we're working less, we're just kind of confused about when we're working and how do we focus on that. So, and this limited boundary control has both physical, psychological and emotional consequences. It increases our stress, we feel more depressed, we find it difficult to switch off from work, and we find it really hard to be truly in the moment with our families and friends, or even just take time out for ourselves. We feel guilty doing that, but also we feel guilty because we don't feel like we're totally focusing on our work. It's this kind of plethora of mixed emotions, because on top of that, we're all supposed to feel grateful that we have a job. So what do? Well, there is no one solution to this, and that's also because there are a lot of moderating variables that impact on how we control the boundaries between our work and non-work lives. But there are some things you can do to at least create psychological boundaries between work and home time. And this is where I will say that, yes, some of those tips do play out again. So first of all, I'd say try to create at least psychologically go to work or finish work. So put in place some kind of routine that's about getting ready for work, or a finishing work routine that simply helps you to transition between the various roles in your life. Be aware of job creep. Now, if you came to our last seminar series 2 weeks ago, you would have heard Kerry Sadiq talk about keeping notes of your work hours for taxation purposes. Well, I would suggest that those notes are also actually helpful for making you really visibly aware of the hours that you are working, because once you're aware of how much you're working, it's the first step in managing that process. Create some boundaries, use your out of office on non-work days, block out your diary, set aside some time for family if you can. But most importantly, ask for support. So all of the research on flexible work arrangements suggests that working from home only really works when it comes with organisational support, supervisory support, and support from your peers. That includes the physical resources to do your job, and also the understanding, the care and trust of those that you work with, that you are doing the best that you can. So make sure you've got the resources that you need, and if you don't, ask for them. Which, you know, if I share some of my own private realities, I think this is kind of ironic. I was just in my office earlier planning to do this seminar from there with my own mic and my own camera, only to find that it was worse lighting and a worse setup than I have from working from home. So finally, I just say, look, it also helps if you can seek support from those people that are at home with you. But I'm not going to go into that, because I'm going to leave that discussion for Robin to talk about in our next seminar, our next speaker. So thanks so much.